Long before food delivery apps or gourmet sauces, families were cooking up magic with what little they had. These meals weren't about luxury. They were about love, survival, and pure kitchen creativity. We're talking about dishes that came from tight budgets but big hearts. Meals made with scraps, but seasoned with soul. And somehow, they always tasted better than anything that came in a fancy box. So don't underestimate those humble recipes. They carry stories, wisdom, and flavor you won't find in a 5-star restaurant. Grandma called it cooking smart. I call it delicious history. 1. Potato and hot water soup. Ingredients: potatoes, water, a pinch of salt, and if you're feeling adventurous, onion skins, bay leaves, a splash of milk, or a spoonful of flour. This one's straight from my grandma's kitchen. She used to say, "If you've got potatoes and boiling water, you've got dinner." And honestly, she was right. This humble soup was a go-to when the fridge was nearly empty but the hunger was real. Just chop a few potatoes, boil them in water with a little salt, and boom, you've got a meal. No frills, no fuss, just comfort in a bowl. If Grandma had extras lying around like onion skins or a bay leaf, she'd toss them in like some kind of kitchen wizard. A splash of milk? That was a special occasion. And sometimes she'd stir in a bit of flour to make it feel more filling. The best part? Even the potato peels got their moment of glory. In they went, adding nutrients and proving Grandma's golden rule. Nothing goes to waste if you know what you're doing. Simple, affordable, surprisingly satisfying. Thanks, Grandma. 2. Coffee soup, aka bread in a cup breakfast. Ingredients: weak coffee, stale bread or crackers, optional sugar or butter. This is one of those Grandma knew exactly what she was doing recipes. She called it coffee soup, but I secretly think she enjoyed watching our confused faces the first time she served it for breakfast. Here's how it worked. You take a cup of leftover coffee, usually the weak stuff no one wanted anymore, and pour it over a chunk of stale bread or broken up crackers. That's it. Breakfast is served. If Grandma was feeling generous, or had some sugar stashed away, she'd sprinkle a little on top. On rare mornings, we got a dab of butter too, what she called luxury edition. Now, don't knock it till you try it. It's warm, it's oddly comforting, and it turns something you'd normally throw away into a budget-friendly breakfast. Even some French and Scandinavian households had their own versions, so technically it's international cuisine. You just need a little coffee, a crust of bread, and a grandma who doesn't waste a thing. 3. Wilted lettuce salad. Ingredients: wilted lettuce, bacon grease, vinegar, sugar, salt, optional. Sliced onions, hard-boiled eggs. According to my grandmother, lettuce never goes bad. It just gets a second chance. And that second chance came sizzling in a skillet. She called it wilted lettuce salad, but don't expect anything crispy or Instagram-worthy. This dish was more like a warm hug from the garden. When the lettuce started drooping, instead of tossing it, Grandma revived it with a hot dressing made from bacon grease, vinegar, sugar, and a pinch of salt. The heat gently softened the leaves and gave them a tangy, savory flavor that made you forget they were ever on their last leg. If we had onions or a hard-boiled egg, she'd toss those in too and act like it was a 5-star upgrade. Southern and Appalachian kitchens had been doing this forever, because when you grow your food, you learn not to waste a single leaf. The beauty of this dish? It turns almost trash into totally tasty. It's proof that flavor doesn't come from perfection. It comes from knowing how to work with what you've got. And Grandma? She worked magic with wilted lettuce. 4. Boiled flour dumplings. Ingredients: flour, salt, water. Optional: egg, lard, bacon grease, pepper. My grandmother used to say, "If you've got flour and water, you've got dinner, or at least something to chew on." And she meant it. Boiled flour dumplings were her go-to trick when the pantry looked more like a suggestion than a grocery list. All it took was some flour, a pinch of salt, and enough water to make a dough that could hold itself together. If she had an egg or a bit of lard, she'd throw that in too like she was making something fancy. She'd roll the dough into rough little lumps. No cookie cutters, no perfection, and drop them straight into boiling water or broth. On lucky days, that broth came from a stew. On not-so-lucky days, it was just water with a spoonful of bacon grease and a whole lot of hope. But here's the magic. Somehow, these humble dumplings made you feel like you'd eaten a real meal. They didn't need to impress, they just needed to fill you up. People all over, from Eastern Europe to the Appalachian Mountains, had their own versions. Grandma didn't call it cultural cuisine. She called it making it work. And work it did. 5. Cracker and milk soup. Ingredients: saltine crackers, milk, optional, sugar or warm water as a substitute. According to my grandmother, you didn't need a stove to make something warm, just a little milk and a lot of imagination. Cracker and milk soup was her secret weapon when the kitchen looked empty. Saltine crackers were always around, cheap, long-lasting, and somehow magically filling. When bread was too pricey or just plain gone, crackers stepped in like the unsung heroes of the pantry. Sometimes she'd pour cold milk over a bowl of crushed crackers and call it breakfast. Other times, she'd heat the milk up and serve it like soup, and yes, that made it feel a little fancier. If there was sugar in the house, she'd sprinkle a bit on top like she was dressing it up for Sunday dinner. And when milk ran low, Grandma would just use warm water and act like nothing happened. "It's still soup," she'd say, with the confidence of a 5-star chef. This dish wasn't meant to impress anyone. It was meant to comfort, to stretch what little you had, and to remind you that a full belly didn't always require a full fridge. Thanks to Grandma, I learned early that resourcefulness beats a recipe book any day. 6. Corn cob jelly. Ingredients: stripped corn cobs, water, sugar, pectin, optional, lemon juice for brightness. My grandma used to say, "If it still has color, it still has purpose." That's how she ended up boiling corn cobs like they were gold bars. Corn cob jelly was her kitchen alchemy. After the corn kernels were eaten, the cobs weren't tossed. They were simmered in a pot of water until the liquid turned a light golden hue. Add some sugar, a little pectin, and boom! You've got jelly that looks like honey and tastes like sunshine with a hint of corn. She'd spoon it over biscuits, drizzle it on pancakes, or just spread it on plain bread like it was the fanciest preserve in town. And honestly, kind of was. On the farm, corn was already everywhere. Cornbread, cornmeal, even corn dodgers. But jelly made from the cobs? That was grandma-level genius. Corn cob jelly wasn't just creative. It was a declaration. Nothing goes to waste in this house. And with one sweet, golden jar at a time, she turned scraps into something special. 7. Fruit slump. Ingredients: any fruit, fresh, dried, or canned. Sugar, flour, water, optional. Butter, spices like cinnamon or nutmeg. My grandma didn't need an oven to make dessert. Just a pot, some fruit, and a little creativity. She called it fruit slump, but depending on the mood or the sound it made while bubbling, she sometimes called it grunt. Either way, it always disappeared fast. Here's how it worked. She'd simmer whatever fruit she had, berries, apples, pears, even canned peaches, with sugar in a big pot. Then came the fun part, dropping spoonfuls of soft flour dough right on top. As it cooked, the dough puffed up like little clouds, soaking in all the juicy sweetness. No pie crusts, no fancy mixers, no baking trays. Just a bubbling pot of dessert that smelled like a hug. Some folks say it's called a slump because the dough sinks a little when it settles. Others say it's a grunt because of the sound it makes while cooking. Grandma just said it was delicious, and that was that. And the best part? It used whatever was on hand. No berries? Use apples. No apples? Try rhubarb. No rhubarb? She'd say, then it's a dough day, not a fruit day. Fruit slump proved that even without an oven, dessert was never off the table. Not when Grandma was in charge. 8. Bread pudding with water sauce. Ingredients: for the pudding: stale bread, milk, sugar, cinnamon, optional, egg, butter, raisins. For the sauce: water, sugar, flour, optional, vanilla or nutmeg for extra flavor. Stale bread is just dessert waiting to happen, Grandma used to say, and then she'd prove it. Her bread pudding with water sauce was legendary. When the bread started to go stiff, she didn't toss it. She soaked it in milk, sugar, a dash of cinnamon, and if we were lucky, an egg or two. After a quick bake, it came out warm, soft, and smelling like it had no business being made from leftovers. But the real magic, that came from the water sauce. No cream? No problem. Grandma whipped up a sweet, silky topping using just water, sugar, and a little flour to thicken it. Sometimes she'd sneak in a drop of vanilla or a pinch of nutmeg, depending on what she had stashed in the cupboard. The result was a dessert that tasted like comfort and smelled like home, all without fancy ingredients. It wasn't about impressing anyone. It was about turning what's left into what's loved. And Grandma always said the best recipes start with what you were about to throw away. 9. Pantry stew. Ingredients: elbow macaroni, canned tomatoes, beans, hot dog slices. Optional. Any extra vegetables or leftover broth. It's not fancy, but it fills the belly. That's what my grandma always said when she ladled out her famous pantry stew. She never called it Hoover stew. To her, it was just what you made when the fridge was nearly empty, but dinner still had to happen. She'd boil up some elbow macaroni, throw in canned tomatoes, a can of beans, and, if we hit the jackpot that week, a few chopped up hot dogs. If there were extra veggies, great. If not, nobody complained. Sometimes she'd stretch it into a soup with more water. Other times it came out like a chunky pasta bowl. No rules, just resourcefulness. There was never a set recipe, only a set mission. Feed the family, waste nothing, and keep it simple. It may not have looked like much, but it always hit the spot. And somehow, a pot of whatever's left became the most comforting meal at the table. Grandma's pantry stew was proof that with a few cans, a box of pasta, and some clever hands, you could still serve up something that felt like home. 10. Molasses milk. Ingredients: milk, 1 spoonful of molasses. Optional. Pinch of cinnamon or nutmeg. Who needs store-bought vitamins when you've got molasses in the pantry? Grandma used to say with a wink, pouring up her famous molasses milk. This simple drink was her secret weapon for tired mornings and growing kids. All it took was a spoonful of molasses stirred into a glass of milk. Slightly sweet, slightly bitter, and somehow always just right, like chocolate milk's rustic, hard-working cousin. Molasses wasn't just cheaper than sugar, it actually did something. Packed with iron and calcium, it gave you a little boost before school, before chores, or just before facing a day with not much else in the fridge. Molasses milk wasn't fancy, but it was smart. It turned basic ingredients into a nutrient-rich drink that warmed you up and filled you out. In farm towns and busy kitchens, it was the go-to energy drink before energy drinks were a thing. To Grandma, it wasn't about flavor alone. It was about function. Stretching the pantry, fueling the family, and adding just enough sweetness to push through the day. And honestly, it still hits the spot. 11. Dandelion greens with bacon fat. Ingredients: fresh dandelion greens, bacon fat. Optional. Vinegar, salt, or chopped onions. If it grows in the yard and doesn't bite you, you can probably eat it. That was Grandma's philosophy, especially when it came to dandelion greens. While the neighbors were busy pulling them out of the lawn, she was picking them for dinner. Dandelion greens with bacon fat was her way of turning weeds into a warm, savory side dish. She'd rinse the greens, wilt them just a bit, then drizzle hot bacon fat over the top like it was liquid gold. That 1 spoonful softened the bitterness and added rich flavor that made the dish feel way fancier than it really was. Sometimes she'd add a splash of vinegar for balance or a pinch of salt to round it out. On extra lucky days, a few sautéed onions joined the party. But even in its simplest form, it was delicious and deeply satisfying. For Grandma, the backyard wasn't just a place to hang laundry. It was a pantry, and those wild greens, they were dinner, healthy, free, and full of the kind of flavor that came from making the most of what the land gave you. It wasn't just a meal. It was proof that you don't need a grocery list to eat well. Just a little bacon fat and a sharp eye. 12. Fried potato peels. Ingredients: potato peels, bacon grease or lard. Optional. Salt, vinegar for extra flavor. Don't toss the best part. Grandma would say, grabbing the potato peels before they hit the trash. In her kitchen, fried potato peels weren't scraps, they were snacks. When times were lean, even the peel had a purpose. She'd save them up, heat a bit of bacon grease in a skillet, and fry those thin slices until they turned golden and crispy. Add a sprinkle of salt if you had it, a splash of vinegar if you were feeling bold. And there you had it, rustic chips straight from the peel. It was crunchy, salty, and surprisingly satisfying. Like the poor man's potato chip, only smarter. Potatoes were already a household hero, cheap, filling, and long-lasting. But Grandma made sure every single bit earned its place on the plate. Even the peels got their moment to shine. To her, waste was the real enemy, and flavor was hiding where most people weren't looking. So next time you're peeling spuds, save those skins. Fry them up. You might just discover Grandma's favorite kind of genius. 13. Plain grits. Water ingredients. Ground corn, grits, water, optional. Pinch of salt. No butter, no milk, no problem. That's what Grandma said as she stirred her pot of plain grits like she was cooking for royalty. This was about as simple as food got. Just ground corn and water simmered until it thickened into something warm, filling, and slightly gluey, in the best way possible. If we had salt, she'd add a pinch. If not, she'd just tell us to chew slower and imagine flavor. The magic of grits? They stretch. A small scoop turns into a big pot, and leftovers? Oh, Grandma had a plan for those too. She'd let them cool overnight, slice them up the next day, and fry them until crispy, like budget-friendly polenta squares with attitude. It wasn't about impressing anyone. It was about making do, making it last, and making sure nobody went to bed hungry. Plain grits was Grandma's lesson in grit, literally and spiritually. No frills, just fuel. And somehow, it always left you feeling a little stronger. 14. Apple peel jelly. Ingredients: apple peels and cores, water, sugar, optional. Lemon juice, honey, or molasses as sugar substitutes. If it smells like apple and still wiggles, we don't waste it. That was Grandma's rule, especially when she made her famous apple peel jelly. After peeling apples for pies or canning, she'd scoop up all the scraps, peels, cores, and all, and toss them into a pot. Add water, bring it to a boil, and let nature do the rest. The natural pectin in the fruit worked its magic, turning the mix into a silky, amber jelly once sugar, or honey, if that's all we had, was added. Sometimes she'd squeeze in a bit of lemon juice to brighten it up. As she'd say, though I think she just liked showing off her citrus, this jelly wasn't just sweet, it was smart. It turned leftovers into luxury, with a flavor that felt like autumn in a jar. We'd spread it on biscuits, toast, or just lick it straight off the spoon when nobody was looking. More than a recipe, apple peel jelly was a reminder that with care, nothing had to go to waste. In Grandma's kitchen, every scrap had potential, and every jar was packed with quiet genius.